Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Eric Devine and Philippe Bargiel will be joining us a little later on. After some technical difficulties cut us short last week, get yourselves prepped for a bumper show tonight. We look back at week 12 of the Ligue 1 season, which was jam-packed in itself, while also having a look at this week's international football. It's a real feast for the ears. But before that, here's the latest headlines. France won their qualifying fixture this week, against Sweden, despite going behind due to an Emil Forsberg goal. Paul Pogba and Dimitri Payet pulled the win back for France, who sit atop of their group on 10 points, 3 points ahead of both the Netherlands and Sweden. They followed that up this evening with a 0-0 draw against Ivory Coast. That's despite debuts for Sebastian Corchia and for
Thomas Lemar.
There we are, Thomas Lemar. Sorry, I've not had it written down. But also for, full debuts from the start for Ousmane Dembele as well. We move on now to Ligue 1 news, and Matchday 12 got off to an entertaining start as Montpellier rolled over, visiting Marseille 3-1 behind Araya Boudibou's brace. The Algerian has now netted 4 goals in his last 2 league outings. In the early match, on fire Monaco continued their torrid pace, thrashing Nancy 6-0 with braces from inform Radamel Falcao and Guido Carrillo. In the multiplex, Angers striker and new father Faramad Diédhiou scored the match's only goal to lead the hosts over Lille 1-0, while Bordeaux won 2-1 against Lorient despite a howler from Jérôme Prieur, as Diego Roland's superb overhead kick saved the hosts' blushes. Lyon struggled to break down Bastia at home, but came away with a 2-1 win, the first time they have won 2 in a row since August, as the visitors finished with 9 men. At Nantes, the hosts got a last-ditch equaliser from Marius Stupinski to earn a 1-1 draw against Toulouse, who had led through Martin Braithwaite's first half penalty. That wasn't the only late drama on the Saturday previous week, however, as Guingamp came back from 3-1 down to earn a point at Dijon. On the Sunday of that weekend, Caen recorded the weekend shot result as Ivan Santini's penalty being the only goal of a match as the hosts held off previously unbeaten Nice. Saint-Etienne looks to have a winnable match on their hands ahead of a challenging visit to Nice in a fortnight's time. But a pair of rash tackles saw Ousmane Tanan sent off at Metz, Les Verts doing well to earn a scoreless draw. And finally, Paris Saint-Germain initially struggled to break down Rennes in the late kickoff last Sunday, but a Gelson Fernandez own goal set them on the way to a 4-0 victory to move within 3 points of leaders Nice and level on points with Monaco. In Ligue 2, goals were at a premium during that weekend, but the top 4 sides, Brest, Reims, Le Havre and Troyes, all won to keep the top of the table unchanged. And that's all for the news, but remember, for all the latest headlines, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com or follow us on Twitter at GFFM. We start this week with the international break for Les Bleus that fits in 1 friendly and 1 qualifier. But let's start with tonight's game with Ivory Coast, Eric. And it was a relatively unremarkable game in the end. What did you think to their performance and for the debutants in this one?
It was a little bit disappointing. I think that it was exciting to see Rabiot get his first start, and I think he showed good energy and good drive. I think a lot of the play was going through him rather than Pogba, which was a bit of a surprise in the way that France had set up their midfield. So he did well. Kanté did well as well. I think he showed that he should probably be a regular starter no matter what the formation, Kanté that is. But the rest of the team was pretty lackluster. Payet and Gamero did a lot of running, but there wasn't a whole lot of quality. Payet's set pieces were not what they could have been, perhaps. And Dembele, I think, was really poor in the half that he played. I think he had one good chance cutting inside, but for the most part, his delivery was poor. He looked sort of lost on that right wing. Given his propensity to cut inside, I think that right wing position, if France are going to opt for a more attacking option, Dembele as opposed to Moussa Sissoko or Nabil Fekir, say, they might be better suited with a more orthodox winger. This is the kind of match that I would have really loved to have seen Kingsley Coman in to stretch the field a little bit more. Defensively, the defense was pretty sound. I think Digne probably had the better of him, taken by Serge Aurier and his runs forward. But at right back, Djibril Sidibe, who I think had a pretty poor match against Sweden, looked really much improved. And Costil was surprisingly strong. He came up with at least 2 strong saves that I can recall to keep the match scoreless. So definitely showing that he may have stolen a march there on Areola as that third choice for the time being, at least.
Yeah, and that's one of the points I want to make. There was a number of changes in this one compared to the Sweden game, especially giving some youth players their chance, like Rabiot and Dembele and Dean and well, although he's not quite as young anymore, Costil. Have any of them really cemented their mark of being in the squads in the future? Is there anyone that still needs a lot of work, or do you think that the one that he selected for this current international break is the one that we'll probably more likely see going forward, other than maybe a Lacazette or a Coman when fit?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Rabiot, as I said, really impressed. I think that the versatility and the dynamism that he shows, not only tactically but positionally, I think he really needs to be included in this squad. I mean, this is the thing. It doesn't come down not only to talent. If you're on equal grounds in terms of talent and ability with another player of a similar age and a similar point in one's career, if you are Adrien Rabiot, if you're able to play as a holding midfielder, as a central midfielder, or even getting forward a little bit more as he sometimes does with PSG, that amount of versatility is gonna be fantastic. He might regret he had a good chance from a corner very early on, I think in the 3rd or 4th minute, and headed wide, but. Other than that, I think it was a pretty accomplished performance for him, given how lackluster Pogba played. Rabiot was really taking the brunt of moving the ball forward from defense, and I think he turned in a really accomplished performance. I think that he should be absolutely a part of this France squad going forward, barring injury.
Yeah, and thinking. Sorry, carry on. I was just going
to say the player who did disappoint, I think might be certainly at risk of not being a part of the squad going forward is Dembele. I think that on his first start, he was off the pace. He didn't really seem to link very well with Sidibe going forward. Sidibe was the one that was providing more natural width and creating more danger with the way he crossed the ball. Sidibe in particular created a really nice chance for Fekir in the second half that the Lyon striker couldn't unfortunately take. But really a strong performance from Sidibe, but Dembele, I think, with a combination of Coman and Lacazette being fit, I don't think deserves a place in this squad. Let him develop. Let him try and get France qualified for the 2019 under 21 European Championship for a change. And I think he needs just a little bit more seasoning. We've seen how that's really jump-started the careers of the likes of Bakayoko, Rabiot, Tolisso in those midfield positions. Tom Lamar as well is another player who I think whose under 21 experience has served him really well. I think Dembele just needs a little bit more seasoning. Remember, he's barely played with under 21s, to say nothing of the senior squad. And this is just a player who's certainly got massive potential. His statistics for Dortmund and his performance at Rennes last season bear that out. But right now, we're looking at a player who's just not quite there yet. I think he needs a bit more seasoning.
Yeah, he needs a little bit more time in the oven yet. I think he's a spectacular talent. And like you mentioned with Rabiot, I think I agree with you. He's been terrific for Paris Saint-Germain. And France always need an extra couple of options in midfield, with Matuidi maybe not playing as often, and they need someone maybe in a 4-3-3 if they're going to play that going forward. It is what Deschamps prefers to play, at least, and he's an excellent option for them to have. But let's talk about that qualifier, the more important game, you might say. A completely different side in this one as well. They struggled for the first half, and they went behind as well, but they got the result they needed. Is there something they can at least learn from this one, or was the result paramount in this?
I think a little bit of both. I think that I think what we saw was I actually rewatched the match this morning. I was not able to watch it live, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. I think that France, in this instance, were a little bit resting on their laurels, but it was good to see them snap out of it, if you will, and play to a really high standard. Pardon me. When called upon, Griezmann and Payet looked very sharp up top, and I think that France now having won this match are certainly in cruise control and the heavy favorites to win this group. I think we shouldn't discount that. But we also, when it comes to competitive fixture, I think that results aside, if we're looking at France as being a contender / perhaps even the favorite for the World Cup in 2018, this result and today's result have to be taken as a negative. I think that their sharpness was lacking pretty badly, if you ask me. I think that we would want to see just a little bit more of a cutting edge, a little bit more aggression, especially playing at home in a match that had that level of importance about it.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about 3 players that did start that game and didn't play last night, and they have been contentious points in the past. And I'll start with the current Arsenal striker, Olivier Giroud, starting up front. How is he? And is he starting to find a place in this side, or really is it something we should Deschamps should think about cutting out of the team?
I don't. I understand his place. I think he needs to be in 23, absolutely. But let's reflect on that. The synthesis that we saw between the the synthesis we saw between Gamero and Griezmann when the two of them started up top together. We haven't seen that. Griezmann obviously was not included for this evening's encounter, and I think that the best France have seen, again, quality of opposition has to be taken here as a bit of a caveat. The best we've seen France is in that match against Bulgaria since the tournament anyway. I think that they were sharp, they were incisive, and the interplay of Gamero and Griezmann to stretch defenses, both of them using their pace, finishing ability. Despite their small size, they both have good heading ability, so you're not missing that physical presence that Giroud can offer at set pieces. I mean, both of these two players, despite being, 5'9", 5'8", are still, a dangerous presence in a really multivalent way that I think won't see France lacking anything without an orthodox target man.
Yeah, it seems like it's Deschamps pushing that agenda forward. I know it might sound strange to say, but I still think that someone in form like Modeste might be a better option, at least for qualifiers where you're trying to get results. But I do want to talk about a couple more. So another one is Mohamed Sissoko, who obviously had a good Euros, but has not played regularly really for Tottenham, and he's suspended for the next couple of games. Again, he was another one who had a relatively middling game, and it seems unusual to include him especially in those wide positions where France have so much quality.
I see where you're coming from, but at this point in time, I don't know who would necessarily be a better option. I like Coman as an orthodox winger to stretch play, but we've seen Griezmann play wide on the right, and we've seen him not be a success there. And I think that for the time being, Sissoko, despite a disappointing start to his time with Tottenham, based on what he did this summer, and based on a lack of real competition for France, I think that he does continue to deserve to start there on the biggest stage. It's admittedly somewhat regrettable. I think that Dembele and Coman both have fantastic potential, but between a combination of injury and just a general sense of youth, that neither of them are that player yet. Could that change by the time we reach Russia? Absolutely. But for the time being, Sissoko regrettably is a deserved starter, despite an uneven last couple of months.
Let's hope that changes towards the summer. And finally, the another surprise is a player that wasn't even in the squad initially, and that's Patrice Evra, who did start at the weekend. How was he? And it's a strange one to call him up late and then include him. Do you think that maybe it was harsh to leave him out if he performed well, or is he really nearing the end of his international career?
You know what, Nathan, I'm going to have to backtrack on this. I have expressed recently that I thought Evra looked past at the tournament, but I think that he's shown in the performances for Juventus. I've seen him, I think, 4 times play for Juventus, twice in Serie A and twice against Lyon this season, and he's been impressive every single time. He's not the force he was going forward. I'll admit that, but his defensive abilities are, still as strong as they ever were, if not better. He showed himself to be equally adept playing as part of a 3 or as an orthodox left back with Juve, where he's never going to be a center back for France. Perhaps that remains an option if France have used all their substitutions in a competitive match. I don't think we'd sell that short either. I mean, that's part of the reason perhaps that Jeremy Mathieu have been called into the squad in recent times. And I think that Digne, well, he did have some good moments going forward this evening, doesn't offer as much protection. Still, Evra at approaching 36 years old still is a better left back defensively than is Dean. Pardon me. I mean, again, Kurzawa, no question that the PSG player being fit and on form should be the number one starter, but I think that the solidity that Evra can offer the squad is makes him the favorite ahead of Dean, as long as he can continue that injury. And this is the other thing too, that the way he's being used by Allegri is, even though Juventus are playing 2 matches in most weeks, Evra's playing perhaps 2 out of every 5 matches to this point. And I think that if his club manager, that is Allegri at Juventus, can continue to use Evra in this way and not overload him and overwork him at his age, then he could perhaps save some of those legs and continue to be an important force, an important factor for France leading up to the tournament, even at the age of 37 years old, which he'll be, I believe, when the tournament starts.
Yeah, and if he keeps dropping that Instagram fire, as the youngsters may say, that he might be a valued point of the squad for entertainment purposes as well. But we'll move on from international football and back onto Ligue 1 action after we missed last week, unfortunately, due to technical issues. But we'll talk about the top 3 who have been shuffling their positions this last couple of weeks. PSG and Monaco both had big wins. Nice stumbled to their first defeat of the season at Caen. We'll start with the champions, Eric. Was it finally a statement of intent in that 4-0 win from Unai Emery's men?
No. I think that PSG are yet to make a statement game in Liga. I mean, the matches in which they've struggled, the draw with Marseille, the loss to Toulouse, the loss to Monaco. Again, Marseille are not what we would say a top quality team, but they've yet to have a decisive result against a fellow contender. I mean, they've been somewhat of a flat track bully, and this is always the thing, right? That we can look at PSG as playing below par and hoping to sneak a result thanks to Zlatan against badly outclassed opposition from the bottom half of the table. But France has thrown up more surprises this season. Nice and Toulouse are the obvious ones, but I think even Monaco have probably outplayed expectations. Given the injury struggles they have and the improvement of the likes of Bakayoko and Fabinho really coming to their own as a midfield pairing. And I don't think that I think that those teams are going to have struggled a little bit more with consistency just because they have a little bit less class than PSG. But PSG still have not shown themselves to me to be the best team in France. And I think that they're not really even in that conversation. If you're to pit PSG against one of those teams I mentioned, Nice and Monaco, the other contenders, I think that they're a definitive third right now. I mean, the table says that, yes, but they haven't shown that they can take that step up in class when they need to. There's been just a few too many nervy moments. We look at their start against Ludogorets in the Champions League. Both matches against Basel were quite nervy, and perhaps they shouldn't have gotten the results they did. Similarly against Arsenal. The times that which this team has come up against truly class opposition this season, pardon me, they've been found wanting, and I think that's excuse me, pardon me. That's something that Emery still needs to continue to work on, is to get this team into that next level. We've seen him get great improvements, particularly from the likes of Adrien Rabiot, and Lucas Moura as well. I think has had a good start to the season. He's working harder defensively and continuing to score. But this team as a whole, they haven't shown anywhere near their full potential yet. So it needs to be developed, I think, further.
No, and I have to agree with you that casting your mind back to that Rennes game, and they struggled for a good time until Rennes practically gift wrapped them 2 goals, and that really killed any game off that was ever going to break out from that game. And that it was the inefficiencies of their opponents, it seems sometimes, rather than Paris Saint-Germain influencing their will on their opponents, and they've just really struggled to have that impressive marquee win, which could come in a couple of weeks against Arsenal if they're lucky, but we're unsure yet. But there is some good news coming out of Paris Saint-Germain, and that's Presnel Kimpembe signing a new deal with the club. It's a good decision to tie him down for the long term, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that he's going to have to be the third defender for the next couple of years. I think Thiago Silva is still in fine form and still should start the biggest matches. But, as I think is 32 this year, he'll need to be rotated. He'll need to be rested as PSG seek to balance all these cups that they play in the Coupe de League, Coupe de France, as they start hotting up. For PSG's involvement in the Coupe de League, for example, starts in mid-December. So being able to have a reliable third defender in the absence of David Luiz, who perhaps doesn't fit that bill himself, is going to be really important. I think that Kimpembe's performances, both for France's youth squads and including a first national call-up, if not a first national selection, makes him fully deserving of that. He and Marquinhos, PSG are really looking to have a spine in place in terms of their center backs for the next 10 to 12 years, and that's something that very few clubs in the world can count upon, especially having those two play at such a high level at such a young age. Center back's usually a position that we associate players coming to their own a little bit later, but the young ages of those two makes their achievements that much more impressive. And I fully expect Kimpembe to have supplanted Silva in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and he's had a really good start to the season, and kudos to him for getting and earning himself that new deal when given the opportunity for Paris Saint-Germain this season. But we'll move on to the current second place team, and that's Monaco, who really thumped, let's say. It's probably the kindest way to really put it, against Nancy at the weekend. They have Europe's best attack at the moment. They've scored 36 goals in 12 games. That's better than the 32 of Barcelona, the 31 of Real Madrid, the 30 of Liverpool, who all have played a game less but would need spectacular results to even match that. Is it surprising that a team that, Eric, we've thought is as incredibly defensive and solid and stern at the back, being such a creative and exciting outfit?
Yeah, it is surprising. And this is the thing. If we look back at the first strong team that Jardim had with Monaco, and that's the 2014-15 edition, the one that beat Arsenal and gave Juve all they could handle in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. That team's identity was defensive. It was Tula alone, it was Kondogbia, and it was that front three of Ferrer, Carrasco, Martial, and Bernardo Silva.
Yes.
So, but that team was ultra defensive. It was built upon the strengths of the likes of Raji and Carvalho as well at center back. But as those last two in particular, and Tula aged out of the squad, what we've seen is a much more dynamic team, and it's much more pleasing on the eye. We've got accomplished attacking fullbacks in the likes of Mendy and Sidibe, who were brought in this summer. Fantastic acquisitions in both parts. You're going to get out of those two players who are going to be in and around the France squad for the next 10 to 12 years, and are going to be ambitious and hungry to take their chances in the Champions League and at the top level of football in Liga. And likewise the two young midfielders too, Fabinho and Bakayoko. Fabinho was fantastic last year, but Bakayoko is really getting his chance now that he's fit. I mean, this is a player of whom a lot was expected prior to his arrival at Monaco. But I think what we've seen from this player is someone who, when fit, has a real chance to be a part of that senior squad. Maybe not in 2018, but perhaps heading into the Euros in 2020. I think that his progression this season has been, frankly astronomical, meteoric, whatever superlative term you want to use, and it just shows that really how much injuries had undone him. I mean, both from his time at Rennes, when he burst onto the scene, and in his Monaco career. He's had to deal with major injuries and playing behind the likes of Tula and Kondogbia, both of whom, Kondogbia at this point is relatively a non-factor, but Tula at the time, was a very experienced French international, was a natural leader on the pitch. It was going to be hard for a young player to find time in that tactical system. João Moutinho was playing as a central/defensive midfielder at that point in time as well. And just to see him come and blossom, particularly this season, has been, really hard. I mean, France just continues to be this well of young talent. And I think, Nathan, that's probably the main reason that you and I, do appreciate Ligue 1, do appreciate these teams, is that France continues to turn out the world's best young talent. And I hesitate to put, Bakayoko in that very top bracket. He's 22. He's not that young, but I think he's making up for lost time right now, and we've really got a fantastic player on our hands. And that's to say nothing about the return of Germain to the fold after being on loan at Nice last season, and Radamel Falcao's resurgence as well. I mean, there's just so many positives we can take from this team, and I really hope that they can continue to press and be part of that top three, and we can have a really entertaining title race in Liga for a change.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go out on a limb, and I think Bakayoko might make that 2018 squad. Trying to think of the top of my head someone who could be a cover for Kante if they do play a defensive midfielder like that. And off the top of my head, other than possibly Rabiot filling in that kind of role, I can't think of someone off the top of my head who could fill that role for France, in all honesty. And you're right, he's been terrific. And I want to mention a player who's you briefly mentioned at the end there, and that's Radamel Falcao, who's had that little kick of resurgence lately. He's scored 4 in 2 games. There was the double against CSK in Moscow in the midweek, and then the double in the thumping of Nancy as well. He's not got that speed anymore, and you can tell when he tries to break forward, there's not that sharpness, there's not that quick 0 to 60 that goes at about 3 seconds, where he flashes past players, and that was really a big part of his game to really have that separation. But the cleverness is still there, the touch is still there, and finally that finish is coming back, and the confidence. And while I don't want to say he's absolutely back yet, some of the goals he scored already, I think it was the turn one against Nancy at the weekend where he controls the ball and turns the corner and blasts it in. It's an absolutely lovely goal. Oh no, that was the one against CSK, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry, apologies. That was the one against CSK. It was a lovely goal. And it's just nice to see a player that, has had injury problems at Monaco beforehand. He had 2 awful years out on loan where it was probably best advised to really stay at Monaco, although he wanted to really sort of prove himself at that level. But it was the wrong time and the wrong environments to bring him out. And it's good to see him slowly coming back and add him to Germain, who's not quite scored as many as he had at Nice, but he's still got that great bit of movement. I'm sure he'll come good as well. And them two mentoring someone like Kylian Mbappe-Lotan, who's going to be a very special player, I think, who's scored and assisted like last weekend as well. That can't be forgotten. And he's another one that, at 17 years old, is going to be it starts to add to that frightening French attack that seems to get better and better. But if you haven't already seen the game yet, I do recommend still people watch the first goal for Falcao, because there's a wonderful moment between 2 Nancy defenders as one tries to stop the other from moving forward, and the other's trying to grapple him away, saying, "I'm on your side. Don't hold me off." It should be, if they still did comedy DVDs of football here in England, it would definitely be on that list this week. But we move on to Nice this time, and it was a weird game against Caen. They struggled to really create much. They only had 4 shots in the entire game, and Caen arguably had the better of the exchange. But is this the end of their great run, Eric, or is this maybe just a simple stumble against a side that set up to beat them?
Yeah, I think it was a stumble. We saw Caen trot out this 5-3-2, 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it, with 3 orthodox center backs, and I think that as a result of that, Nice really struggled to break this side down. This is a team who is a bit thin, to be frank. I mean, they've used a lot of these players in every single league match. The likes of Cyprian, the likes of Sarr, have been played in almost every match, and those who haven't been included, it's because of suspension or injury. Factor in the Europa League on top of that, and it's been a bit of a struggle for Nice to keep that balance. I think that the loss to Red Bull Salzburg is a positive thing. I think that their progression out of the Europa League is, all but impossible at this point in time, and that once those exertions are over, hopefully Nice can, perhaps bring in a player or 2 in the winter window. If there is that the continued ambition in this project, I mean, certainly bringing in the likes of Balotelli and Belhanda with their salary demands, Dante as well, what their salary demands must be, shows a real statement of intent. And once they can add to that and create more depth, I don't see any reason why Nice couldn't continue. There's just such a fantastic number of younger players here who I think really are still we're yet to see the best of, despite their good starts to the season. Will and Cyprian in particular has been really impressive, but I think also the young winger on loan from Juventus, Donis, is. I think he's someone who could be a key player as well. I wouldn't undersell him. Jean-Michel Seri's been fantastic again. He's Liga's leading assist maker with 6 already from just a dozen matches played. That's a pretty impressive return. There's more to come from Nice, and I think they just have to be cautious now about how they negotiate this. I mean, let's face it. Kahn decided to play a different system, changed from their 4-1-4-1 that they habitually have played under Garand, and to move to a 5-3-2. And now that's a clear indication for me, and I think it should be for Lucien Favre as well, to recognize that, hey, we've had a good start to the season. That's not going unnoticed, right? They have a target on their backs now. They are the league leaders, and for a team to radically alter their tactics, that's a huge mark of respect. What we've seen other teams do that against the likes of PSG. Lille did that a couple weeks ago in their Friday night match, playing a 5-4-1, and Caen did the same thing, and they were able to steal a march on Nice. So it's going to remain to be seen how Favre deals with this in terms of player rotation. But I think having the Europa League off the table come the beginning of December will be a huge relief and allow this team to really knuckle down and continue to push for Champions League contention. And let's remember, even before they added the likes of Cyprian and Balotelli and Belhanda in the offseason, they weren't that far away. They were in contention up until the last 3 or 4 weeks of last season. So the core of that team, minus Ben Arfa and Germain, and Nampalys Mendy as well. I mean, there's been some changes, obviously. A lot of these players should be hungry to repeat that success.
Yeah, and I think that's fairly fair to say. I think they maybe need a little bit more depth come January. I think they've missed Paul Bice since he's been out, and the shift back to the form players at the back has sort of maybe opened some exposure of that defence, and hopefully they can recover from it. But I thought there was a great quote from Johan Cardinal this week in Nice Martin, which is either we win or we learn, and hopefully Nice learn from that loss. But I do want to talk again. It's another young player that's signed a contract, and you've mentioned him briefly, and that's young Malang Sarr has signed his first professional deal with Nice last week. Again, that's another one that they needed to tie down, and he looks like he could be a really good defender as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a player. Pardon me. Sorry, just getting over being ill here. Who's been used as a left of 3 center backs, but can also play at left back. He's got good energy, good motor. I think that at his age to play center back, even when you've got the experience likes of Dante and Bice alongside you to help out, is tremendous. I think that we can't say enough. I mean, when we talk about the feats of the likes of Alban Lafont at Toulouse, but I mean, this is really a tremendous experience for this young man to come out of nowhere to not have his name on his shirt. I remember the first match of the season against Rennes, saying, "Oh, who's this guy?" Okay, well, I watched the match. Oh, okay, he gets a goal. Maybe it's a little bit lucky. People don't really know who he is, but he's continued on from that first match of the season in fine form, and I think that he's really earned call-ups from the French international setup, and I think that he really looks to be one for the future. And still, at the age of 17, he could be 6 or 7 years away from hitting his peak, and that's just, frankly, a frightening thought. I think that Nice will do very, very well to hold on to him, or if they do sell him, given the prices that have been paid for central defenders in the recent past, stand to make quite a mint on him. I think about the fees paid for the likes of Abdenor and Hakeem Mangala in the recent past, and we'd have to think that Sarr is worth considerably more than either of the two of those. So he could be either a boon to Nice on the field or off the field if they do decide to sell him. Again, I'm not advocating money moving out of Ligue 1, or players moving out of Ligue 1, but the fact remains that Nice aren't going to be able to compete with Premier League wages or those offered by the top clubs in Europe, the Bayerns, the Juves, the Real Madrids.
Yeah, exactly. But be great to see him finally have a name on the back of his shirt, and he did keep very down to earth, we'll say, on this, because he did admit that he will be staying in his mother's house, yet he won't be moving out. The money hasn't quite got to his head yet, so that's great to see as well. But we'll move on to a team that's been impressing us in the last couple of weeks, although they did get bit 6-2 by Monaco a couple of weeks ago as well, and that's Montpellier, who brushed past Marseille on the previous Friday night with an impressive performance. They've seen them sort of free-flowing, and Eric, you think they could make a charge to the Europa League places in current form?
I do. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, but given they're the worst defensive team in the league, but I think that this team's really missed Daniel Congre. And if he can come back soon enough and replace Saint-Germain at the heart of that defense, then you've got a really solid team. Stéphane Sessagnon's been in tremendous form since arriving. Morgan Sanson looks like the player he was 2 seasons ago, if not better, after an injury-racked 2015-2016. Just a fantastic, full of energy player, willing to run with the ball, create tackles, play on the counter. I think in Steve Mounier, you've got a young striker who has the pace and energy that we have seen from Casimir Ninga that makes an ideal outlet for playing on the counterattack. But he also offers just a little bit more physicality, a little bit more aerial ability that allows him to be more of a fulcrum, a focal point, if you will, at the head of that attack. And yeah, in Riyad Boudebouz, you've got a player who's arguably in the form of his career, which is saying something. I mean, he's an Algerian international. He's an experienced player. But that goal against Marseille a week ago last Friday was to draw the ball up and hit that on the half volley like he did was just a sublime bit of skill. I think that you're really building a complete team. I have some questions about right back. I'm not convinced by either Delplania or Vandenborre. But in Ligue 1, there is a real lack of focus on attacking football. And what Frédéric Ans has done by setting the team up in this way with Sanson able to play that shuttling role, moving back and forth between defensive midfield alongside the likes of Silla, Remy, Shaqiri, and to get forward and support Sanson, or to get forward and support Sessegnon, that is, you're really seeing a team in La Payade playing with a dynamism and an attacking intent that's really rare in all the teams except the very top, the Monacos, the PSGs, the Lyons, the Nices. And just because of that, I think that this team can really be buoyed by a focus on an attacking play, a focus on having an attacking mentality. And we just haven't seen that. I mean, look at the teams that are consistently in the Europa League. Saint-Etienne, okay. I mean, Christophe Galtier, great manager. In Loic Perrin and Stéphane Ruffier, he's got one of the best center backs and one of the best goalkeepers in France. But if Saint-Etienne were to play with more intent, could we have seen them in the Champions League one of these last 5 or 6 seasons under Galtier's charge? And that's a real question to be asked. The same thing could be said about those great Lille teams with Simon Kjær and Marco Basha in the recent past at the heart of defense. If they're a little bit more attacking intent, if. But Hans doesn't want to take that into consideration. And yes, missing Congre has made things a struggle. I mean, conceding 3 to Dijon, unfortunate. Conceding 2 to Lorient, unfortunate. Getting pasted by Lyon after Congre's injury was also unfortunate. And they lost 5-1. But the fact of the matter is, if you go back and look match by match, with Congre in this team, with the exception of losing to Saint-Etienne 3-1, Montpellier haven't gotten hammered by anybody. And if they can turn around and show that attacking intent, and again, the results against Marseille, I think, is a great illustration. A team that hadn't conceded yet under Rudy Garcia to put 3 past them with ease, it could have been more, is really impressive. And I think that Frédéric Ans has his team playing, at least going forward, to the best of its abilities. And once Congre comes back and they can perhaps get a handle on that right back situation, maybe if they've got money or to get a player on loan in the winter window, that would be great. But otherwise, yeah, I think there's no reason. They're only 5 points off the European places as it stands. They're in good form. They're confident. And there's no reason Montpellier can't make a push up the table. I know it sounds ludicrous given their defensive struggles, but I think that attacking mentality really has a chance to separate them from the pack, as it were, in Liga.
Yeah, and talking about Riyad Boudebouz, who's been a great player really, and he's probably gone slightly under the radar in Ligue 1 for the successes he's had in previous seasons, and he's really come on again this season, especially early on. He's got 6 goals, 2 assists. He usually averages about 8 assists a season, so say he stays on that, and it's been a really, really good season for him, and he's got wonderful ability from set pieces. He's got wonderful feet. He's got wonderful control. And I did write a piece on him this week as well. And in that, I don't know if you might agree with this, Eric, and I want you to discuss this. I mentioned he might be, for Premier League teams looking for a creative spark, a budget Dimitri Payet. What would you think to that?
Well, Payet operates more on the wing, but he is of a similar mold in that he can score and assist. He's not. I give Payet the edge in terms of being a set piece taker, but yeah, I think your point well stands. I mean, given the sorts of players we've seen come from France that are a little bit more undercooked, not saying anything about their potential. I'm thinking like Saive, Veretout, Wabi Kazri. Boudebouz is certainly cut above any of those players in terms of not only his potential within a more solid system, but also just in terms of his ability in general. I do think you're on the money with that.
And finally, to sort of wrap up this Montpellier talk, I know you really like the look of Steve Mooney as well up front, and especially after losing Casimir Ninga for what will probably likely be the majority of the season after he seemed to be striking form. It's important that they have another focal point to get them goals, and Mooney could be that man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's a young player. There have been some questions, perhaps, about his attitude. I'm not saying in a pardon me, in a willingness to work, but in terms of his discipline. But on loan last season with Nîmes, he was a good goal scorer. I think he scored something like a dozen goals, had a handful of assists. And this is for a Nîmes team that weren't that good. I think League. Let's face it. Anybody listening to this podcast, if you've watched Ligue 2, it's it can be really, really hard going. I mean, I know that the Ligue 2 experts we have for Get French Football News would agree with me as well. And I try to watch a match every now and then, but between our commitments in terms of this, it's a very dour and defensive league. To be able to score, just to confirm now, it was 11 goals last season on loan with Nîmes. To be able to score that amount is pretty impressive. And he's someone who just turned 22. Again, he's got the right mix of power, pace, and I think there's really a lot to be said for this kid. He's someone who's not had perhaps the best opportunities with Montpellier. I think the move to Nîmes was the right one. He was able to be a regular there, get his confidence back, and he was understandably behind a healthy Ninga at the start of the season. But I think Ninga's return at this point is immaterial. I think that Mooney, he's young enough that he can. Even if Montpellier do make a cup run in the Coupe de la Ligue or in the Coupe de France, he's young enough and hungry enough to be able to want to play twice a week and to continue to prove himself and improve upon that good form. 3 goals at the moment. He scored, and there's no reason to think that can't be more. Especially given that those have come more recently. He had a really nice header against Stade Lavallois in the Coupe de la Ligue about a month ago, and he can continue. Should he continue with that form, I think he can be a great focal point of Montpellier's attack, especially given that counter-attacking style.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does look, I thought, especially in that Marseille game, his movement and everything, he does look like a more active player that does help the likes of Sanson and Boudebouz and Sessegnon, who are breaking from those slightly further back positions to add them into the game. But we'll finish this week with something that happened just before the internationals, and that's Lorient appointed a new manager last week in former of Evian and Valenciennes man, Bernard Cassoni. A number of high-profile managers turned this one down, Eric. I mean, there was Hubert Fournier wanted to bring some staff, and they rejected that claim, so he turned it down. Remy Gard turned it down. Elie Bourque turned it down. Roland Courbis turned it down. So, in the end, after that hit list, is this a good appointment from someone he's not been a manager for the last year?
What are you going to do? Lorient. All right, so I started to write a piece for the website on this, and then I was like, well, and my initial focus was about Cassoni, and I said, okay, he's a well-traveled manager, et cetera, he's a decent appointment, he's got experience, fine. But the more I delved into it, looking at the comings and goings of players in Lorient, the performances, their proclivities, particularly since the departure of Gourcuff, this team is in real trouble, and what it's down to is a lack of youth development of Lorient's current squad. Benjamin Lecomte was an academy player, but he was bought at the age of 18, I believe, from Niort. And I don't think of the current players, any of the other ones are academy players. Some of them were bought, yes, at a young age, and some of them are still young. And this is regular players. I know there are some coming through, the likes of Guendouzi and Ben Camus. So there are a couple, but that's a frankly frightening statistic. And even PSG have, the likes of Augustin, Kimpembe, Rabiot, and it's just, I don't know, just this total lack of focus on youth has really hamstrung Lorient, and it puts them in a bad position. And the thing is, you can get away without having youth be an important component of your team if you're Monaco. They're another team that hasn't really had many of their own players come through. But that's because they have the money to do so. Every single other team that we can think of in Liga that's having this level of success is doing it through their own academy and through buying players at a very young age. I'm talking 16, 17, 18 from other clubs. We don't see that with Lorient. They're trying to get players who, have had decent success in the past but aren't that young. I'm thinking like some Jeremy Allier or Mikel Siani. And it's just not coming off. You have this abject collection of prospects and veteran players. There's no cohesive way that this team is moving forward. And especially with the money this team took in over the summer. I mean, selling Guerrero, selling Ndong for combined, I think, 32 million euros.
Yeah, around that amount.
There needs to be a more cohesive approach to this. I mean, if you're taking Elidier on a free, you're probably paying him considerable wages. The same with Mbemba, the same with Siani. These are players who played in, clubs that are in European competition. Not Elidier, but certainly Siani and Mbemba with their time with Lyon and Lazio. Then what is the overarching philosophy here? I don't know. And the sell of Kone last season as well. It's just really baffling. I can understand why these managers are turning this down. This is a surefire ticket to relegation. We say, oh, Lorient have the talent, they have this experience. I don't see it. Even if they stay up next year, you're going to deal with another year older Siani. You're going to deal with like Benjamin Lecomte, who is, 25, 26. An interesting prospect, a solid goalkeeper, but how much longer is he going to want to stay? It's a really disappointing state of affairs for a club that had admittedly overachieved under Gourcuff, but there's no attraction right now at this club. The gap between the older players in this team and the younger players that are coming through is simply too big, and gambling on has-beens or never were. Sylvain Marveaux, I know he's been injured, is another one. I just don't see it. I really don't see it, and I think that this club's there's no future here. Why would any manager who wants to continue to have a career in club football for the next 5 to 10 years take this project on?
Yeah, I'm secretly so glad you've said that after a couple of weeks and of saying that Lorient looked like maybe a disaster waiting to happen, and everyone looking at the squad and thinking there's enough there. I agree. There's just nothing. There's just not enough there from youngsters. The prospects are either not going to be. They don't look like they have the talent level to make it that next step unless they move on extraordinarily. The experienced players are either not performing or are aging to the point where if they do stay up, they're going to struggle again next season because how do you get rid of them? It's a cesspool. And the fact that so many high-profile managers sprinted away from this, even when it looked like Hubert Fournier was going to get it, he still managed to wriggle a way out still as well. But it's going to be a long, hard season for Les Merlus, it seems. And that's all we have for this week, at least my thanks to Eric and for all of you listening at home. Join us for the preview show hosted by Eric on Thursday. And remember to join us here. Well, it will be Monday usually at the same time, at least on Monday next week. A bientôt and goodbye.